empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? 4 to 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go.
Welcome to the Buckeye Scoop live show. It is Sunday, and we are ready to rock. There is a basketball game. I can't really call it a big game. It normally would be a big game. Playing Purdue, tipping off soon. We're going to lead right into that. We have a ton of football stuff to talk about. Recruiting, winter workouts, and spring football all on the horizon. Really close now. About 2 weeks out. So time flies. They like to knock that first week out before they go on spring break. So it is going to be here before you know it. It's going to blink. So, as always, be very thankful and grateful for you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We love doing these shows with you guys. Appreciate you guys. Get those questions fired up as you guys start filing in here. Appreciate it as always. If you enjoy this, please click like, subscribe, and get that alert like my girl Sue. Sue, I appreciate you. I know that you obviously get the alerts because you're on instantaneously. So that's why we love. Appreciate you. That being said, I'm going to welcome back Nevada, Buck Nevada. Welcome back, my friend.
Oh, man, it feels good to be back. I've been battling a herniated disc in my back. And for anybody who's had that out there, man, I never really had enough sympathy for you. So I apologize. So I'm definitely now on the sympathy train, but I'm back and excited to talk about the Buckeyes today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know how much we can talk about basketball. I don't even want to really lead with it, but Purdue game, Nevada, you had a quick bet take. What are your thoughts on the Purdue game today?
Bet everything that you have in your lifetime on Purdue on the money line, and you'll be about 12% richer at the end of the day, and it'll kind of soften the blow of the Ohio State blowout today. So that's what I'm saying. Nevada's bet for the day. Everything you own on Purdue on the money line.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird. They're just kind of twisting in the wind and they're in this tailspin they can't get out of. So on to brighter things. We got a little update this weekend. A couple of freshmen that are standing out in Mickey Marotti's program. As you know, we had about 8 to 10 kids that came in early. We had a couple of transfers come in early. These guys are getting the screws put to them by Mickey Marotti and the coaching staff. This is generally the worst time of the entire year because they have 6 a.m. workouts, usually 3 to 4 days a week leading into spring ball. It sucks. You got to get up at 5 a.m., get to the facility by 5:30, work out 6 to 7, and the workouts are very tough. So Nevada, give me the names of a couple guys that you heard were standing out during these winter workouts.
Well, you always look for the guys that are kind of getting the first mentions, getting the first recognition as being kind of the alpha dogs in the group. And, you remember in years past, we'd have tagged guys like Marvin Harrison, relatively early on or something like that. So you have an idea of kind of the order of magnitude of what we're talking about. And the two guys that seem to have kind of distanced themselves in terms of the strength and conditioning staff's opinion, in terms of being the alphas, are Jelani Thurman and Carnell Tate, two really highly regarded guys. One obviously a premier tight end, another a wide receiver, but they've kind of stepped to the front of the class, have really started to lead the group. They're just, all these guys are elite athletes that are in here, but they seem like they're just a cut above. And those would be two names that I'd be looking for immediate impact this year. And we've been talking about them. We've been excited to see them, and it's just it's nice to see the kind of rubber hit the road, and these guys really starting to make a impact on the OSU strength and conditioning staff, the OSU staff in general, and their fellow teammates. So Thurman and Tate, early leaders in the clubhouse for early contributors. Keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be it's always tough when you're a freshman to get into the mix early, but this is going to be an interesting spring, man, because I don't know how much Cade Stover is going to do. He's dinged up last year. A lot of the wide receivers have already been announced as out. Mecca Julian, Marvin's not going to do anything. So, you might think you've got all these old guys in front of you, but when it's spring ball, man, Urban, Truss took care, he didn't take care of the older guys the way Urban did. He did to a degree. Ryan's continued the Urban tradition where if you're one of those guys who's a cinch, top guy, top returner, whatever, he likes to monitor you and make sure that you don't get dinged up or hurt or beat up. They don't tackle in the spring game anymore. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I think that some of these receivers, these 2022s, better look out because you got the Rogers brothers and you got Carnell both here, all here for spring ball. And, when you got that freshman coming in behind you who's highly touted and he's the number 2 receiver in the country, you better get moving. I mean, this is a big spring for a lot of guys, and it's kind of, I joke, it's like moving day. These guys, if you're going into year 2, you better find a spot in the rotation, or else they're going to be looking. I mean, they already look to replace you every year anyways, because that's just the nature of college football. They're always trying to bring in someone better behind you. But now's the time to carve it out. And for these receivers, what an opportunity they have with no Marvin, no Julian, no Emeka. Nevada, who are some guys that you're looking forward to seeing this spring who might have enhanced roles due to guys sitting out with surgeries and injuries?
Well, we've talked a lot about guys like C.J. Hicks and guys like, Sonny Styles and Kai Stokes. And, I'm just excited to see the backups play. And, I think the great thing about spring ball is the fact that the starters are sitting out, because, you think about during this regular season, we go out and we watch the games, and, we eagerly, wait for the time when the second team comes in. And, what's been happening in recent years is, one, the amount of time those guys have gotten on the field has been, minimal. And secondly, when they go out in the field, when let's talk about a guy like Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord's been here for 2 years. We saw him play that one game when CJ was out. The last year when he came in, I mean, how many passes did he even get a chance to throw? So, they're not even giving these guys a chance to, this spring is going to be all about, live reps for 2 quarterbacks that are going at it. You've got young wide receivers that have come in that are all going to be trying to make their way. You've got tight ends that are going to be trying to make a difference. You've got defensive backs that are going to be trying to play. So, look, it's going to be great. I mean, every spring practice here is going to be meaningful. Every spring scrimmage is going to be meaningful. This may be one of the most impactful springs for Ohio State in a very, very long time, and it starts in 2 weeks. So, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, obviously, the position everyone is not, I don't know if worried, or they are, you can say worried. The offensive line is going to be really interesting to see how they rotate as well. That's something that everyone wants to watch. Where does Josh Fryer end up? Does he end up at left tackle, right tackle? He's your most experienced tackle coming back. Do you switch him over to left? I'd leave him at right, but DJ at left. But Justin Fry said that those 2 guards are going to stay at guard. So it looks like Zen Mikulski, who is the backup left tackle in every game during blowouts, is going to be the guy to get the first turn there. Center, who knows? There's probably going to be 3 or 4 guys rotating at center. It stinks that Jacob James is out, because he's a guy that, was in the mix, and he was a guy that was the second team center last year. He's out for spring with an injury. So that's tough. I mean, that's one of the things about football is when you get injured, man, I mean, timing is kind of everything in life. And it's definitely everything when it comes to gaining a spot in football and on the football field, because if you miss spring, you're basically, it's like you get lapped by the competition, and it's really tough. I mean, I missed the spring in 2004, cost me the starting job, and it's something that, there's nothing you can really do about it. I mean, you don't dream of getting your ankle, destroyed, sprained severely, and missing a month of practice, but that's kind of what happens. It's football. So, but yeah, it'll be very interesting to see the rotations. Nevada, what are the odds right now, if you're setting the odds for Kyle McCord being the starting quarterback week 1?
85%. And I've been actually getting really some good reports about Kyle. And, I've been asked, kind of gun to my head, long term, who I thought the starter would be. And I've been kind of on Team Brown. But I'm telling you, I'm hearing some really, really good reports about Kyle. I think, Kyle's lost a little bit of weight. He's improved his mobility. He's a little bit more nimble, a little bit more aggressive, looks a little bit more athletic, and throws a beautiful ball. And it certainly has got that history with Marvin Harrison that goes all the way back to high school, which you can't, that kind of chemistry you can't replicate. So, it's going to be a serious quarterback derby. The best man's going to win, and whoever the best man is going to be a really, really good quarterback, because he's going to be well prepared. He's, you're talking about a guy who's either been here 2 years or a guy who's been here a full year. They've had a chance to kind of really, fully acclimate to the OSU system. And, but I've been hearing some really good things about Kyle McCord, and eager to see it on the field in the spring.
I agree. And happy birthday, Burleson Buckeye. I saw that you're in here. Happy birthday, my dog. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that, the thing that's going to be strange is, like, how do you rotate the receivers through? Because you're not going to have, your big dogs that you normally would be thrown to with the one. So that's going to be kind of a negative when you have your backups. Excuse me, building chemistry with the starter. It's not optimal, but I understand why it happens. Nevada, Jim Knowles' defense is something under the microscope. What do you want to see out of the spring? We got a couple new DBs. Everyone is very excited about Devison, Ogbinison, and we've got Jahad Carter. What do you want to see out of those guys? And can they beat out, I mean, Devison probably, but Sonny Styles and some of these guys, Kai Stokes, what do you want to see out of this defense this spring to take the next step?
Well, I'm telling you right now, this defense is going to be great this year. It's going to be great. I am all in on that. You guys can hold me to it. You guys can have little podcast talking about Nevada Buck the idiot. If this defense isn't terrific, it's going to be a great unit this year. But I'm really excited to see how do they utilize some of these young guys. I mean, you've got kind of an embarrassment of riches in terms of you've got 8, 9 starters back, and you've got high impact transfers back, and then you've got Jack Sawyer, who you've got to find a position for him. I think it's going to be full time at a defensive end with his hand on the ground. But what do you do with C.J. Hicks and Sonny Styles? And I can't wait to see how they figure out how to put them in, because they got to get them on the field. They know they have to get them on the field, but they've got guys in front of them at their traditional positions that aren't going to move, because Tommy Eichenberg's going to win what's the award for the best linebacker? I don't even know what the award's called.
The Butkus?
So he's
like
going to win
Butkus?
the Butkus. I remember Dick Butkus. He's going to win the Butkus Award. He's going to be a first-team All-American. He's going to remind people of A.J. Hawk. I mean, he is really close athletically. I've said that before, and people are like, "Oh, no way!" But if you look at how well he runs, and he'll time very similar to what A.J. Hawk ran. It maybe even a little better. And you're not going to move a guy like that off the field. But I'm just interested to see how Knowles implements some of the young guys in there. What creative ways he can find them to get them on the field, and who plays the jack position, because I know he likes the jack position. You and I are both down on it in terms of how they used it last year. Yeah. But maybe that was a personnel thing more than a scheme thing, and maybe Sonny is the perfect guy for that spot. But we'll find out a little bit about that in the spring, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if they use C.J. Hicks at the jack, get him some sort of a role. It's tougher being a linebacker now that we only run 2 linebackers basically always. We ran 3 sometimes when you see real heavy teams that like to run a lot of tight end run stuff. The Iowas, you bring the third linebacker in, but that's 5, maybe 10% of the snaps on the year tops. So it's interesting to see how do you keep C.J. Hicks engaged? How do you keep Sonny Styles engaged? How much deference do you give to the guys that were here originally? How much do you give to Jahad Carter, who played last year at Syracuse? Does he want a spot? Is he like a Tanner McAllister, where he basically starts every game, or is he a rotational guy? There's a lot of things to evaluate in the spring, and that's kind of the beauty of spring, is when there's a lot of competition, and then you throw in the total wrench of Josh Proctor coming back, which nobody expected, coming back for year 6, a guy that physically tests extremely well in agility drills and strength drills, and he's a guy that's wired differently. He's a tough kid. Again, his fall from grace was something I've never seen. I mean, I've seen falls from grace at Ohio State, but that one was almost incredible how little he played compared to the gaudy praise he got from Jim Knowles to start the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys roll through, and what do they do with the young guys, and who steps up. There's some interior defensive linemen that need to start stepping up. Hero Canoe's in year 2 now. We got some guys that, and the interior is almost as thin as the DN spot is. And, we got to figure out, who's going to rush the passer and who's going to get to the quarterback. Because, JT and Jack, 2 5-star guys, 2 great players, but time to go. It's time to live up to the billing. JT obviously had the massive Penn State game, but the rest of the year, not a lot of production. So it's going to be one of those things where I think these guys, they're hungry. Sometimes when these guys go into year 3, they study harder, they get more rest, they eat better, they start to become pros, because now they actually have a real chance to declare early if they have a huge year. Now they have to have that huge year still, but guys start to sharpen their pencil when they realize that they are now draft eligible. Nevada, Ohio State dropped the Washington series, 2-game set. We're supposed to head out there first, and then they're going to come here in 2024. Your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that? We're likely going to replace that game with a cream puff at home. So we have 8 home games back-to-back years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've got mixed emotions about it, but I understand it, and I'm not a Gene Smith apologist, so whenever I back a Gene Smith play, I've really thought long and hard about it. But I think in this situation, I think there's a couple things that at work. One, like you said, get that 8th home game, which is important. I mean, that stuff those are budget busters for Ohio State, and certainly from as a fan, for somebody who's got a suite, or anybody who's got season tickets, having that 8th game is certainly a big deal, no matter who they're playing it against. Second thing is, you always got to think about the impact of the USC UCLA imminent heading to the Big Ten, because if you've got playing one of those guys on the road and then you play Washington on the road, that would mean you're taking 2 West Coast trips, and I think Ohio State would probably prefer not to do that, and that could be another reason for a move like this, is trying to avoid that second West Coast trip in what could be a national championship type of season. So lots of things at play: money, fatigue, travel, USC UCLA potential expansion. So, I think a smart move by Gene, and definitely a necessary one.
Yeah, we played Washington actually in 07. It was kind of weird because we played them at home in 03, my freshman year, and then we didn't play again out there until 07. And the program had fallen from grace dramatically when we played them in 03. God, I'm blanking on who their coach was, but they had Cody Pickett. They were projected to be like a top 15-ish type team. Time we played them in 07, they had Ty Willingham. Jake Locker was actually a freshman. He ended up being a first-round pick, but it was kind of a tight game, but it is a brutal road trip. I mean, because you got to fly. We left on Thursday afternoon after practice. You fly across the country, 5 hours or whatever it is. Friday we just had like a walk through in the hotel. We went and saw, Starbucks and where they threw the fish and all that stuff. Kind of because we didn't have anything else to do. And then you start your kind of your game routine stuff that night, and then you play. Which I believe was a noon game out there, but it was like a 3:30 game back on the East Coast. And, you're just gassed by the time you get done with the game, and then you got to get on a plane and fly 5 hours home. You get home somewhat late. It's not as late as like a night game at Iowa, but it's traveling is exhausting. And then, you got to get back used to the time zone on Sunday. Again, I know NBA teams do it, NHL teams do it, but football's tough because you got to get up and go that next day. There's not really a break. The coaches got to get in, break the film down. The players got to get in, get a workout in, watch the film. So doing that once a year is plenty for the team, because it feels like it takes a couple days to recover from that, which is something that I noticed with this basketball team. They go out to Iowa. It's a 9:00 Eastern tip. They get waxed to give up like 96 points. Then they got to fly home late Thursday night. Probably got home at 3 or 4 in the morning. Then Friday they got to sleep in, have a shoot around, whatever. Saturday probably practice, and then get on the plane and fly to Purdue today, and get and Purdue's going to be a monster. Their top 5 team. So I think that it's smart by Gene Smith and us to cancel that and write him a check for $500,000 and have the extra home game. I'm sure it'll be a Patsy, a 1AA team, or a MAC team, or whatever. We'll pay him probably $500,000 to show up. But I think that that's the way to do it. Like with scheduling, if you can make it easier, because all that matters is being undefeated at the end of the year, or having one loss so you can make the playoffs. So, as much as you want to see these big, heavy games where you play Washington or you play some team out on the road or whatever, as long as you're undefeated, that's all that matters. And that's something that has hurt us in the past when we've played Oklahoma, or we play like a good team and they beat us, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, now we're on, we're down to 8 and we're not in the top 4, and that obviously changed with the playoffs. But I like the move. I hated the travel. It is a beautiful part of the country, and the stadium is absolutely gorgeous, but it's tough, man. It's tough to do that. Nevada.
Mr. Barton, let me ask you a question about that. scheduling, and I've always, I don't know how much I know we've talked about this, but the SEC kind of went to that week 11 scheduling of cupcakes. Ohio State obviously has done the traditional week 1, week 2, week 3 type of thing. What do you think about the week 11 scheduling of, Furman or North Dakota State or whatever teams they're throwing in there for Liberty that the SEC does?
I think it's genius because a lot of your guys are really beat to crap by the end of the year. It gives you the opportunity to hold guys or limit their snaps because, you can roll the helmets out against Furman with anybody at Bama and beat them. I wish we did it. I think, if we played Youngstown State the week before Michigan, you basically get an entire extra week to game plan for Michigan. So that's, it's like a built-in bye week that isn't a bye week. It's a bye week that basically can't be moved, because normally when you get the schedule, you don't know if you have a bye week 6, week 8, week 10. Basically what they did is they forced the SEC. It's like basically like they inserted a bye week for themselves. So they gave them Furman or the Citadel or whatever. And I think it's absolutely genius because, you have 2 weeks to plan for your rival. If Ohio State was progressive and somehow was able to do that, which I don't think they can, I think it'd have to be a Big Ten decision, obviously. But what an advantage it would be to get guys healthy. I think it makes the product better because if a guy is dinged, you can hold him and ensure that he's ready to go for the Michigan game. I just know how I felt towards the end of the seasons. I mean, you feel terrible. Your body's all beat up. You got a lot of ailments. If a guy can be held, I think it's smart. It's good. But yeah, I think that's why they're the best conference because they think of progressive things like that help the players, it helps the product. But yeah, I think that if the Big Ten did that, I'm sure people would be upset. People would say, "Oh, why are we doing this?" But there's a reason why the SEC does it, and the SEC, as is well documented, has won every national championship except for like 2 in the last 20 years. So, I mean, whatever they're doing, I would try to copy it as close as possible.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I think, people want to jump on it and say, oh, it's Bush League, it's this, that. Man, it's just, they're just smart. They just, they talk about it. It means more down there. It's, they've done it with use of analysts. They've done it with use of medical red shirts. They've done it with gray shirting. They've done it with scheduling. I mean, they're just more progressive. They're always thinking of a way to get an edge. And, I've always wondered that. I mean, like, I know it's nice to have that early cupcake game, but how nice would it be to have another early or late cupcake game, late in the season when you can rest some guys, get yourself healthy, and as you said, game plan, get yourself ready for the big stretch drive, which is the Michigan game, the Big Ten championship game, and the college football playoff. So,
well, yeah, and something that I just kind of thought of it is, at the end of the year, you're going to have a lot of guys that are disgruntled. They're in the portal. And again, this might not save all of them, but, you get a chance to empty your bench if you're playing a terrible team, if you're up 70-0. So some of these guys don't get to play all year, and all of a sudden they actually get to play in front of their family. And for half the games, it's their senior day. So it basically guarantees a win on senior day. Because if you got to go if you're Alabama and you got to go to Auburn, then your senior day is that last game against Furman or Citadel. So basically guarantees that half of those games you're guaranteed to win. And then if you have to play Auburn on the opposite years, then you're up for a real fight. But I don't know. I like it. Again, I'm always pro whatever it takes to keep the players healthy or help them get healthy at the end of the year. That's why something that stinks about the schedule is like you can't really pick when your bye week is. I mean, your bye week can be week 4 where it's probably too early. It can be week 10 where it's probably too late. So, and we have 2 bye weeks some years. So it's a real interesting thing that you brought that up. Cause I think, I would like it. I think that, the hardcore Ohio State ticket buyers, obviously they never liked playing Jacksonville State or Alabama A&M, but it's just part of the deal now. It's almost like I hate to even say the word load management, but it's kind of like, making sure that some of these guys are ready to go for Michigan. Cause look at the flip where if you're, in the Big Ten and they schedule us to play Penn State the week before Michigan or Michigan State the week before Michigan, and it's a tough physical game, you get beat up. Like that doesn't help you leading into the Michigan game. Or if you got to go on the road the week, because that's the thing about these games is they're all home games for these SEC schools. So they're not going to Penn State or to Wisconsin or to Illinois or to Iowa and then playing Michigan the next week. They're literally they're guaranteed to have a home game. That's a nice, easy opponent. Again, no travel for the coaches, no travel for the players. I don't know. I like it. I think that's a great question. Nevada, as we get into this season, Notre Dame has had a lot of crazy stuff going on. Their offensive coordinator took off. Their offensive line coach took off. What's your take on the season? We've got to go to Camp Randall, which will be, very tough with Fickle there. We have Notre Dame, obviously. They've got some turmoil over there. They just got Gino Ginobili to be their tight ends coach. They promoted their tight ends coach to OC. How are you feeling about the Notre Dame game at this moment in time before spring football starts?
Well, look, Notre Dame got a great transfer quarterback, so they've definitely upgraded that position. A guy who can really throw it, and that's a good thing for them. Having said that, make no mistake, Marcus Freeman is not ready to be a Division I head coach, and he's certainly not ready to be the head coach at Notre Dame. And everybody wants to dance around the topic or talk about it. And Marcus, great Buckeye, love him, great, terrific, that's awesome. But he's not ready to be a head coach. If guys like that were ready to be head coaches, everybody could be a Division I head coach, and it would be easy, and everybody would do it, and everybody would be successful at it. But I think there's real problems there because I don't think he was ready for the job. I think he was rushed into the job. And I think there's real issues both on the staff as well as on the team with a head coach who's really over his head in terms of his job. And I think his tenure at Notre Dame is going to be short because I think they're not going to be able to tolerate what's going to be in front of them. I think he might have saved himself a little bit with this quarterback transfer, but I think they've got real problems in Notre Dame, and I think Ohio State's going to hammer them this year.
Yeah, I think that just the amount of transition on the coaching staff. He lost the D-line coach immediately last year. Running backs coach. Obviously they got Dylan McCullough. It was interesting that Dylan McCullough's kids didn't go to Notre Dame. Because their one son, who was a freshman All-American, who Ohio State really wanted, ends up going to Oklahoma. Which when all of his sons entered the portal, I assume they were all going to Notre Dame, but they all ended up at Oklahoma, which was truly bizarre. Especially after we led for the kid and he was committed to Ohio State, then he flipped to Indiana, and then his dad left. So, but Harry Hiestand, who's one of the great O-line coaches ever, just abruptly resigned. And I think if I had to guess, it was because Utah's offensive coordinator, who they were courting, wanted to bring the O-line coach from Utah with him. And I think Harry caught wind of that. Harry wasn't cool with it. He retired, which coaches never really retire. Bruce Arians has retired like 8 times. Dean Pease has retired like 20 times. Coaches just retire when they don't have a job or they don't want a job or the right job hasn't come along yet. But when the right job comes along, like when Bruce Arians retired from the Cardinals, he was retired for like a year, but then, he did TV, and then he's like, then Tampa Bay called and he's like, well, I'm going to lose my retirement. I'm going to give up my retirement and come back and win a title. But yeah, I was surprised that Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman wanted Utah's offensive coordinator, O-line coach. Their combined buyout was $4 million. And Notre Dame, for whatever reason, didn't write the check for it. And those guys went back to Utah. Was that surprising to you, Nevada?
Well, yes and no. That's kind of the way that Notre Dame rolls. Notre Dame thinks they're kind of above that kind of stuff. They've always kind of had that kind of institutional arrogance about making moves like that. And I think it's gonna cost them because they're in a new era right now. We talk about all of the changes to college football and how it's affecting a team like Ohio State, who's an alpha dog in one of the best, either the best or the second best conference in the country. And you've got Notre Dame, who's kind of this lost ship. They're still maintaining their independence. They've got this rookie head coach who's not a rookie anymore, his second year, but they're really not sure what they're doing. They can't really make a full commitment to football, from an NIL standpoint, from an academic standpoint. They still have this illusion of these academic standards they want to maintain. I mean, so I view them as kind of a relic of the past, and really something that, a once proud program that I don't think that they're ever going to come back to prominence until they really kind of recognize the reality of their situation, join the Big Ten, which I think is an inevitable move for them, and get with college football in the year 2023, because they're still living 40 years in the past.
Do you think in the next 3 years Notre Dame joins the conference, and if so, is it the Big Ten?
If they join, when they join a conference, it will be the Big Ten. But like I said, I just don't know how long. The timing on that stuff is always just so tough to call. And Notre Dame has been traditionally difficult to pin down on something like that. But it's like, if I was saying in the next 3 years, I'd probably say over. But in, let's say, the next 5 years, I'd say they're going to be in the Big Ten.
Where do you see college football in the next 3 years? Is it going to be down to the SEC and the Big Ten as we add USC and UCLA into the mega conference? I think the SEC eventually grabs Clemson, Florida State. What are your thoughts on that? Because now that we were onto the Notre Dame train real quick, it's just fascinating how these things are moving. We still don't have a commissioner in the Big Ten yet, which is somewhat surprising, I'd say. We don't have a president at Ohio State. A lot of leadership vacancies open. But what are your thoughts? Where are we going to be at in 3 years, Nevada?
Well, in 3 years, I think it'll look similar like this, with an expanded playoff. And I think that's probably where we're going to be for the foreseeable future. We've talked about Brett Yormark and the impact that he's had on the Big 12 and kind of solidifying them as the commissioner. I think that the Pac-12 obviously is in deep, deep trouble. The ACC, it's all about how quickly they can unwind those grant of rights. But I think over the next 3 to 5 years, you may be down to 4 conferences. But certainly the long-term plan, I think, is the breakaway from the NCAA, the concentration of 50 or 60 teams that are just playing big-time college football in kind of a similar NFL type of setup with maybe 2 AFC, NFC, Big Ten, SEC, 32 teams, 24 teams, whatever it is, on each side of the conference, and they keep all the money in there, and they've really kind of what is really the purpose of the NCAA right now in the administration of college football? I mean, nobody can give me a really straight answer on that. And when there's really not a straight answer to your reason for existence, and there's that much money at stake, you're going to get taken out of the equation. That's just the laws of nature, and I think that's what happens here in the foreseeable future.
When I interviewed Gary Sorkin from the Sugar Bowl, he mentioned that we're the only major sport that doesn't have a commissioner, which I thought was very interesting, just because all of a sudden we were going through the kind of like what needs to change in college football. And for me, I think that was something that was profound. It was something that you just don't really hear about. You don't think about sometimes. And I think that it's true. I think you need to have like an overruling commissioner. You need to have an overruling person that can handle some of these legislations. Like, it's really hard in college football because you got different conferences, you got different states, you got different laws for NIL. You have different things you have to deal with. And there's, California is vastly different from Florida. Florida just passed a huge NIL deal where schools and players can work together. Totally different deal than we have in Ohio. And how fast can Ohio kind of replicate what Florida's doing? I don't like talking about NIL just because I know that people don't like hearing about NIL, but it's something that are we going to be progressive when it comes to helping these schools out, helping these kids out? Like Carnell Tate got an NIL deal as soon as he got here. Jelani Thurman, NIL deal as soon as he got here. Brandon Innes will get an NIL deal as soon as he gets here. All the freshman linemen got NIL deals as soon as they got here. So it's, these freshmen are, they're getting invested in by the Cohesion Fund and by the Foundation. They're cutting them checks as soon as they get here. So that's kind of the situation that we're at now. And I think that it's fantastic. Nevada, we're going to switch back to football, spring ball. James Laurinaitis is making a big splash right now. Said that he wants to coach the linebackers to be the best linebacker coach in the country, which is Honestly, different talk than you normally hear from a grad assistant. Normally, grad assistants are seen and not heard. I've been one before. Like I'm not, out. I did I think one interview my 1 year, but normally those guys are kind of kept in the background, and but it's different when your name is James Laurinaitis. It's different when you're a three-time All-American. Oh, what kind of impact do you expect to have from James this spring?
Well, I think it's going to be substantial, and I think that's why he was brought in. He was not brought in, just to be, James the GA. I mean, he's brought in with the idea that he comes in here for 1 year and then he gets a permanent 10 job next year. And I think that is the plan. That is James's plan. That's Ohio State's plan. So when you see movement on the OSU staff, I can tell you who the next full-time hire is going to be. His name's going to be James Laurinaitis, and I think that gives Ohio State a lot of flexibility. It gives them a chance to really fill some holes on their staff, maybe get a little bit younger on the defensive side of the ball with the recruiting, and really trying to capture some of that Brian Hartline magic that they have on the offensive side, on the defensive side, with a premier guy, a high impact guy, a high energy guy like James Laurinaitis. So no, I think his impact is going to be profound. And for people out there listening, they have to remember this guy was not brought in, like you said, as Joe the GA. This guy was brought in as, hey, you're going to be a full-time coach here at Ohio State. That's the plan. That's what's going to happen.
I apologize. I've been talking, but no, we were really young on the O line. The year I was a GA, we really had to get right. And with James, like it's going to be really interesting when he gets rolling into being kind of the full time linebackers coach, because I'm guessing that's the track he's on. I've talked to him. He projects being a GA for 1 year, so I think that he's going to end up being a pretty fantastic addition to the staff. I think that we really need an injection of new blood into the recruiting, especially on the recruiting side. 'Cause our defensive recruiting hasn't been up to par. I think part of it is just the lack of youth on that side. I think Perry Eliana is a superstar. He's a guy that potentially could be a head coach within 3 years. I think on our staff, the guys that could be head coaches within 3 years are Perry Eliana, Justin Fry, and Brian Hartline. The rest of the guys I think are position coaches, potentially could be coordinators elsewhere. But those are the three guys that are kind of the emerging superstars to be head coaches. And I think with Larry and Jim Knowles, it's just an interesting mix right now, because the odd stuff that we do with the jack is something that Larry has never really done. He's not an odd guy. He's always been a four down guy. They were four down at Penn State. And when I say four down, I mean four down defensive linemen. And it just, that's why I don't think the jack thing worked that great. But, with Knowles and Larry being older, I think you got to get James on the road. Nevada, what are your thoughts on getting James on the road? It was interesting because Parker Fleming just got a 2-year, $500,000 extension per year to work as our special teams coach. He's a guy who's been much maligned. He's a guy that a lot of people think should come off the road so that James Laurinaitis can go and recruit. He's a guy that got, he kind of bounced around in his coaching career, came here as a QC, and he's been promoted, which is something Ryan loves to do. He's promoted about half of his staff from being GAs or QCs to be full-time guys. But Nevada, do you think you could get James on the road? Do you think it's possible? Or do you think after giving Parker Fleming a $500,000 extension that it is not going to happen?
No, I think it's an open question. And, look, I think Ryan Day does a lot of great things. Glad we have him. Glad he's our head coach. Other than somebody named Saban, probably the only guy I'd want to be the head coach at Ohio State right now. But he definitely likes to surround himself with people that he is comfortable with, that he feels like he has total allegiance from, and that he won't be challenged by. And that to me is an issue. And I when you see something like the Parker Fleming thing, I just ask myself, would Nick Saban do something like this? Would Nick Saban, hire all of his full time staff as his friends and GAs? And that's not what he's done. So I am a little troubled by that, but I'm gonna defer to Ryan on this. We're gonna see how this picks up. I mean, Ohio State has to get younger on the defensive side of the ball. We've got kind of an imbalance of coaches right now in terms of how they've got traditionally it's 5 offensive guys, 5 defensive guys, and that's not how it is right now. And a couple of your guys on the defensive side are older guys. I mean, Larry is definitely at the end of the road, and Knowles is an older guy, and recruiting is frankly not his forte. So Ohio State's got to find a way to get younger. You've got a guy like James Laurinaitis. So it'll be interesting to see how they I think they will get him on the road, but how exactly that manifests itself, I'm not exactly sure. But I know it has to be done, and I think it will be done.
We have a question. This is a great question, Paul. Do we need changes with our defensive back coaching? I'll go first because I was surprised when we hired Perry Eliano and we made him the safeties coach. That was something when I first heard that hire. I saw the resume. I saw Sauce Gardner, who just won the Defensive Rookie of the Year in the NFL. I saw Kobe Bryant, not the basketball player, the kid from Glenville, who we turned down, win the Thorpe Award at Cincinnati. And he's our corners coach, and we make him the safeties coach, which, again, I guess you can kind of manufacture that in your head because we run 3 safeties, so maybe that's a more important spot than coaching the corners. Tim Walton's coached in the NFL for a long time, coached Jalen Ramsey, long, illustrious career in the NFL. Corners coach, I don't know. Like, I mean, when you've got a guy that is as red hot coaching the position as Perry Eliano is, and the things I've heard about Perry Eliano from inside the WAC is that he's a superstar. He's going to be a head coach quicker, sooner than later. I don't know. Nevada, what are your thoughts? I'd be real interested to see, what Ryan does to coach him because, not everybody has the same philosophy. I mean, we famously remember when Chris Ash said that Kerry Combs shouldn't coach the corners anymore, and then Chris Ash all of a sudden became the full secondary coach. What are your thoughts on that, Nevada? Who would you have coaching what? Would you leave it how it is? Would you change anything? Would you have a secondary coach and then like a helper? What would you do?
Well, I think I'm gonna, from my standpoint, I think last year has got to be just kind of a wash. We just kind of put that one aside, and though because I'm not sure what the talent level was in the cornerback room, and so I don't want to really rate Tim Walton by what happened last year. I think this year will be a much more fair assessment of where he's at for Ohio State. Like, you hate to put it down to one situation, but I think Tim Walton saved himself by getting the transfer from Ole Miss, Davison. How do you pronounce his last name?
Igbinison?
Davison. I mean, that was a huge get. I cannot emphasize enough what a huge get that was for Ohio State at a critical position of need. And make no mistake, that was a Tim Walton joint. I mean, he did it. I mean, he was on point on that. He managed that guy's recruitment. He, got his interest in Ohio State. He made it happen. And when it happened, Ohio State all of a sudden went from having issues at cornerback to, having a lot less issues because you've got a guy with 2 years of eligibility who was a freshman All-American. And had that not happened, Tim Walton very well may not be at Ohio State. And I think that's how impactful that particular transfer was for Ohio State. I think it might have saved his job.
I agree. I think that getting that kid in, that he was the point guy on, was huge. Inject some talent into the room. Obviously, we already had one transfer. J.K. Johnson took off for LSU. There could be more to come. Again, after spring ball, we'll see 5 to 10 guys transfer out. This is part of how the game is. We'll be in the hunt for more portal kids. guys that are upset with where they're at on the depth chart. They don't see a role, a path going forward at Ohio State will take off. So, but the flip is we're going to see guys that are going to be coming here. There might be guys that don't like their new coach. They don't like their new head coach, position coach, coordinator, scheme. There's a lot of things that are up in the air when spring ball starts, especially for, the 10 or 20% of college football that has new coaches, new schemes. Not every player flits. I mean, Brandon White was the Rose Bowl MVP, and he took off and went to Rutgers because didn't like the scheme. Went and played for Greg Schiano. This is funny because we always laugh about this, Nevada. This isn't a question. This is more of a comment. MK says, it's funny, Fickle flopped and was run out of town as a head coach. Now he's idolized. That is a very interesting point because I always feel like when you're at Ohio State, the person that everybody wants is whoever we don't have or whoever's next or whoever's on the bench or whatever. I mean, because Luke was ran out of town. I was on the staff that year. We were 6-7, the worst team in Ohio State history. There hasn't been a 7-loss team at Ohio State since like the 1880 or something crazy. So you can go look that up. But yeah, talk a little bit about this phenomenon about how people always want who's next or who we don't have, or, it's always been like kind of curious to me because there is a small current underneath of people that want Luke Fickell as the Ohio State head coach. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think I've always been a firm believer in you get what you deserve. And the bottom line is Luke Fickell being the head coach at Ohio State back then is much like Marcus Freeman being the head coach at Notre Dame right now. Luke wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. And so, he got run out of town because he wasn't ready to do the job. And then he went to Cincinnati, and you know what? He grew up, became a head coach, and earned it. And now he's the head coach at Wisconsin on a great trajectory. And I think clearly if Ryan Day moved on, Luke Fickell is going to be right at the top of the list to be the next head coach at Ohio State. But I think that's kind of the way that life works. I think you get what you deserve. And, I think, had Luke gone to Cincinnati and went, 4-9 every year, you know what? He would be a head coach right now, but he didn't do that. He turned Cincinnati into a power, into a playoff team, into a team with real legitimacy out for a team that really hadn't been significant in the college football landscape for a very long time. That's all on Luke. So I give him all the credit in the world. And it's okay to say that he's not the same coach in 2023 as he was in 2011. He's grown up, he's matured, he's become a much better coach. And so I think in that particular situation, look, I sure didn't want him to be that full-time head coach in Ohio State in 2011. I know some people did. I think we'd kind of gone on a little run. We were like 4-1 and 5-1 or what it was. People were talking about, let's extend Luke. I'm telling you, that could have taken us into the abyss because he was not ready to be a head coach, but he is now, and I couldn't be happier for him. Couldn't happen to a better or more hardworking guy.
Yeah, I think what Luke went through in 2011 was really unfair. I think that they should have made Jim Haycock the head coach or Jim Bowman the head coach, an older guy. Obviously, Luke was the guy that was, he had the look of the leader. He was a heavyweight champion, was a future head coach. But, he was handed a team that, was in just complete disarray. I mean, we got hit by a nuclear bomb when they fired Tress. Kind of out of the blue. Like we knew that magazine article was coming. I remember that like it was yesterday. And then you've got, Terrell Pryor, the Heisman frontrunner, basically kicked off the team, gone. You have suspensions every week. I mean, we had guys like Marcus Hall would get a 2-game suspension on like a Tuesday. And then we'd have to go figure out what are we going to do with the O-line. Mike Adams suspended for 5 games. DeVera's out for 8 games. I mean, it was, it might have been 10 games. I mean, DeVera was out for, it seemed like he only played in the Michigan game. And by some miracle, we beat that Russell Wilson Wisconsin team, which was amazing. But we, with Luke, like the thing you can always kind of tell is that he didn't really want most of the guys on that staff because he didn't bring most of those guys around with him. Like when he went to Cincinnati, he didn't bring, a bunch of guys that were there. And it's not fair to a head coach to inherit a staff that has guys that don't match your philosophy or your demeanor or whatever. So, Luke's been able to pick and choose. And it's the same thing with when he was at Cincinnati. When you're from Cincinnati to Wisconsin, he didn't bring all his guys. He brought some new guys in because when you go to Wisconsin, you can afford better talent as your coaches, and maybe there's some guys you hired that you just don't really want to bring along. So it's interesting. I think Luke is going to be formidable. I think Wisconsin's going to get back to being a power because they've always been a power, and they've fallen on hard times for whatever reason, but they've had the same mentality. They've run the same offense, almost the same defense for literally ever. And I think they're going to get back to that. I think that he's got great alignment with the athletic director, Chris McIntosh, who was a former heavyweight wrestler. He was a first-round pick tackle for the Seattle Seahawks back in the late 90s. So there's a lot of chemistry and synergy there, and I think that's important for Luke because he needs a guy that that is like him and is a toughness guy. He's a values guy, and I think Wisconsin's a great fit. I think they're going to be tough to handle up in Camp Randall. I know they're already hyping that game. A lot of people I know that are in the industry have already been invited to that game. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be one of the biggest games in Wisconsin history because we're going to come to town. We're probably going to be a top 2 or 3 team, and it's going to be the week of Halloween, so there won't be any alcohol left in the entire state probably, and that place is going to go crazy. Gonna do a couple questions. So far away with these questions, guys. Yeah, I totally agree on the DeVere thing. This is a good one, Nevada. This is probably a good one to end on. Nevada, why does Gene Smith get a pass? He threw trust under the bus, screwed up NIL, missed some good coaches, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think I have personal experience with Gene Smith, which is not positive. So you're talking to a guy who's already inclined not to like him. So I'm going to put that right on the table. But I think he's done some good things, but he's done some remarkably dumb things. The passing on the national championship by going to that stupid bowl game. What was that? The Citrus Bowl or whatever that was. That was
the Gator Bowl.
The Gator Bowl, whatever that was. That was one of the dumbest decisions in history. His misreading of the intentions of the NCAA on that and he's like, a bowl ban is not on the table, and it was just absolutely terrible. What he did, and like I said, his treatment of Trussell, I thought was abysmal. NIL, look, I think this has been tough, but I think Ohio State's kind of getting it together on NIL, and I like that. With the merger of some of these collectives, I think it's the right way to do it. And I give him a pass only from a standpoint of, he gets something for longevity. He's done some nice things with some of the other programs. He hasn't driven the Ferrari off the cliff into the abyss. Is he Andy Geiger? No, but in my opinion, no one will be Andy Geiger. Andy Geiger was a giant. It was a guy who, you're talking about a guy who was the athletic director at Stanford, and it doesn't get any better than that. And then he comes to Ohio State, and what a gentleman. Really, led the revamping of Ohio State's facilities, getting them, into the 20th century, and. But for Gene, I think he's kind of a mixed bag. He's kind of at the end of his tenure. It's going to be really interesting to see who comes next, though. Like you said, there's some huge power gaps in the Big Ten right now, at Ohio State in the presidency, and Gene Smith's at the end of his tenure as well. So Ohio State football, Ohio State athletics, the Ohio State University is going to look very, very different here over the next 2-3 years. And who they hire could have a profound impact on the trajectory of the program. So, buckle up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be interesting. It is funny you bring up that bowl ban because I wish that they would have just taken a vote of the players because literally none of the players wanted to play in that game. The coaches were predominantly lame ducks. It was like an old lame animal that you just wish you could take out back and shoot. That's what the 2011 season was. We lose to Michigan on a heartbreaker. I just know like going down there, it was so just incredibly awkward because, you're sitting in a staff meeting. I was in the offensive staff meetings working every day, and me and Stan Drayton were retained. Everybody else was canned. Defensively, Luke was retained. Taver was actually going to get retained, and then Vrabel late was retained. And, but it's just weird because you're sitting next to a bunch of guys that literally we went to played that game. We got hosed in that game by some terrible replay officials, lose the game, fly home. The coaches that weren't on the team anymore, like Jim Bowman, had already cleaned their offices out. So when they got off the bus, they literally went to their cars and just never came back to the Woody Hayes again. So it was, so Jim Haycock, a bunch of guys that I'd worked with for years and played, I played with and knew, and they were just gone. And then, the rest of us, like me, Luke Fickle, Taver, we walked into the building that night and started working for Urban. And I went and talked to Ed Warner and laid out the offensive line and said, these are the guys that are the players. These are the guys that we need to replace. I kind of drew up on the board who I thought the starting line should be. And it was funny because that was the line where I think like Jack Mehort needs to be our left tackle. He's our best player. I think Corey Lindsley needs to be our center. You could put Norwell at right tackle or at guard. We'll just figure it out. I mean, this is before Reed Fragel got moved to O-line. But yeah, this was it was surreal because I was like, I can't believe we played this stupid game because it was just such a joke. But we did, and it is what it is. You know what's funny? This is a great question. So I've heard about this, and I think that someone in my family took a photo of this. So there was a giant like thing of me outside of one of the bars on Bourbon Street, and I remember people kept telling me about it, and I never got to see it because like I didn't really. I mean, I walked on Bourbon Street like the first day, but after that, I was basically sequestered in the hotel because I didn't go out at night. I don't want to be around crowds. I was literally just like in my room. I know a lot of guys were like going out and not necessarily partying, but just getting out to, get some fresh air. But no, I did not get to keep that. I wonder where that is. I'm sure it's in some trash heap at the bottom of the trash heap.
Kurt, weren't you the model? Weren't you the model for like the Big Boy, like the guy that holds that hamburger outside the Big Boy restaurants or something? Yeah, that's it exactly.
The goody boy.
The goody boy. Oh man, give me some hot fudge cake now. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
No, it was funny. I actually wasn't. I was the King. You remember the King, the Burger King? He walked out with Mayweather for the Pacquiao deal. So he walked out and that was me. Yeah. I was actually the King. Wow. That's how I could get a ticket. No, I'm just teasing. Well, we're going to wrap this thing up because this game's about to tip in about 5 minutes. Nevada, any final thoughts as we wrap this? Appreciate you guys tuning in on this Sunday as we head into this basketball game. Any final thoughts?
No, betting is legal in Ohio State, and you can do it from your phone. Take all your money, bet it on the Purdue money line. I think it's like minus 800 right now. It gets you 12.5% return on your money in 2 hours. Let's go. Load up. It's time to load the wagon. Go boiler up.
The Nevada money machine is turned on. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we love doing these shows with you guys. Appreciate all the correspondence back and forth. Fantastic questions. Really a great show. So we appreciate you guys being here. If you enjoy this, we're going to be on BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a game thread that is going to be very spicy today where we talk about the Purdue basketball game. So if you guys need correspondence during the games, BuckeyeScoop.com is your spot. We have all the analysis. Bill Green, 2 fantastic articles on some huge names in recruiting at both quarterback and cornerback. So Bank has been killing it. Absolutely love it. I just absolutely love the stuff that we're bringing. So we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy this, please leave us a like, click subscribe, and then we're gonna go get to this game. So appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.